Guys and gals, welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you tuning in. What we have today is the 2010 Chevy Equinox. It is back in the shop. It needs front brakes, possibly rotors. We got all the parts. We'll see what it needs. Stay tuned. Okay, option floor jack underneath one side. You can do both. Lift jack in the middle on the jacking point underneath the vehicle. Either way, I'm going to probably do one side at a time, but I will use a floor jack for safety, even though I'm not crawling under the vehicle. Floor jack under the rail of the vehicle. 22 millimeter if you have air tools. I'm just going to use a breaker bar today. 22 millimeter fits best. 7/8 socket is your next option. Before you lift up the wheel, if you're not using air tools, go ahead and break those lug nuts loose, and then we'll jack up the vehicle. Once the wheel's off, by the way, we got the jack stand, added security. I always just throw the tire underneath. Okay, to 14 millimeter, I'm using 3/8 on these. 14 millimeter bolts on the calipers. Pins, remove those, one on top and one down on the bottom. The option for rotor, if we're going to take the rotors off, we're going to remove the caliper completely, and it's two 18 millimeter bolts, and I think the best option is a breaker bar. These are torqued pretty tight, but what I like about this breaker bar is you have this angle. It will pivot, so you can actually move, give yourself more room to work here by moving it. There's straight, which would be just a ratchet. Get out here and get clear of everything. Got a short extension on there. This is 1/2 inch drive, and then break it loose. And same thing on the bottom. Okay, once the 14 millimeter pin bolts are out of there, if you're just going to do the brake pads, and screwdriver, pry bar, and then the caliper will start to just pull off the brake pads. There's a few ways to do this, but that's what I'm doing with this job. And then I'm going to get a wire, and I'm going to take the caliper, because I want to hang it up here and not twist or put pressure on the hydraulic lines. Okay, actually, I was going to replace the rotors anyway. They looked a little beat up. Probably went a little too long on the brake pads, but anyway, the customer called and said he was also having a wobbling sensation initial brake application, so it could be a work rotor. Either way, I think it's a good idea to replace them. So it's a 30 torx, and you remove that, and that loosens up the rotor. And then with that bracket coming off, the two 18 millimeter bolts, brackets right there. So that does not have to come off if you're just doing pads. It does have to come off if you're doing the rotor also. Okay, we'll take the rotor off and get the new one on. New part matches the old part. Clean it up with brake clean, get any manufacturer oils off of it, and then we will start the installation. The old rotor, I use some anti-seize on there, and it really works well. Not only a little bit on the threads of the lug nuts, but also the wheel will not seize onto there. So on the hub assembly, if you see much rust on there, you want to clean that up. Some emery cloth, depending on how heavy it is, but you just want to make sure that the rotor is flush, sits flush on the hub. Okay, rotor's installed. Remember the torx, and then we're going to put the caliper bracket back on. The two 18 millimeter bolts. We'll torque those down. I'll put the torque specs in the descriptions. And oh, by the way, forgot, these pins have to move freely in and out, so If they don't, usually the inside brake pad gets beat up. But pull those out, clean them, and then reinstall them with some grease. Okay, now we're gonna push the piston back in on the caliper. First thing we're gonna do is remove the brake reservoir cap. It is down there ways because the piston has been pushed in. We'll start to push that piston back in, and then we'll see where the level is on this, and if it comes up too much, I'll show you the Timmy method to stop that from overflowing. C-clamp, one of the old brake pads, put it on the piston, center up the brake, or the C-clamp, and then slowly turn it in as that piston will move back in, and then we'll check that reservoir to see how close we are getting to the top. And if it is going to overflow, we'll make sure that doesn't happen. Let's make sure you get new hardware with your brake pads. These are with brake pads slide on, and you don't want to reuse the old rusty ones because you want the brake pads to start to get pushed in smoothly and not get hung up. All right, these will sit just like this, and then we're going to put the brake pads on. The inner one has the wear piece here. That's the inner one. And the outer one, obviously you want to orientate it right. That would be wrong. This way it would be right. Slide it in the bottom first and then pop in the top. Do the same thing on the back. Okay, remember, clean your pins up. They should slide in easy. You want them to slide in and out, top and bottom one. And then we're gonna just put our caliper back over the brake pads. We had already pushed out the piston all the way in, so it should slide over very easily. And then we will put the 14mm bolts back in and torque it down. Just a note, when you're tightening up or loosening the caliper, 14mm caliper bolts, that pin may spin on you, so it doesn't take much to hold it. You can put a small crescent wrench on that or whatever you have handy, and just put a little pressure on it, and it won't spin on you. Wheel goes back on, and of course, remember, go in your pattern. Every other one for 5 lugs. Tighten them up. Snug them all up, and then once we have the vehicle back on the ground, we will torque them. Okay, and remember to put your cap back on your reservoir. And one note on that, if it was not serviced with additional fluids during your between your brake jobs, it should not overflow. It should just fill back up. So but just something to keep an eye on. Some people do service them in between when it gets a little lower. But anyway, make sure that cap's back on. Torque your wheels, lug nuts down to 122 foot-pounds after you've taken it off the jack stand. Okay, a word about safety. Of course, when you first start the vehicle up, you will not have any brakes because that piston is pushed back. It's going to have to get snugged up to those brake pads. So before you put the leave it in park and pump the brakes a few times, make sure it feels good, firm. Then you can put it in gear, see if the brakes hold, you don't move. They do. Then you can start to back out or pull ahead or whatever it is you're going to do. Okay, thanks for watching. One final step is breaking in your brake pads and or rotors, in this case both. Again, we've done the safety step. We've made sure that the brakes work before we actually put the car in gear and backed up, pulled up forward. Now you're going to go out and drive it. You're going to get up to about 60 miles an hour, and then you're going to add steady brake pressure to slow you down to about 20, back up to 60, down to 20, and do that 6, 7, 8 times, obviously on a road that's going to allow that, safety first. And then give it about 5 to 10 minutes of just cruising speed, and you should be good to go. If anybody has any ideas on that, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, subscribe, thumbs up. If you didn't like it, let me know that too. Thank you. Sorry about the wind noise. It is very windy today.